The wind was sharp that morning, cold enough to sting the skin like tiny needles. Kayla pulled her thin brown coat tighter around her shoulders. Her hands, wrapped around a small shopping bag, were shaking, not just from the cold, but from fear, worry, and hunger. Her daughter, Rue, stood beside her. Leaning against the market wall, Rue's bare feet were turning purple. But she didn't complain. She was used to pain now. That made Kella's heart break even more. The line at the market was long. Dozens of aliens and humans stood together, waiting for their turn to enter, but no one talked. Only the cold wind spoke. Whistling through broken streetlights and empty buildings, this planet Velrose 3 was once a mining hub. Now it was a broken place where people barely survived. Kayla had come here after her husband died in a transport raid. She had nothing left except Rue, and even that felt like it was slipping away. Kayla looked down at the bag in her hand. It held a small box of protein cubes, a can of thermal soup, and a roll of bread. Too much, she realized. She had miscalculated her credits again. She would have to return something or risk embarrassment at the counter, but which one could she give up? The bread. Rue loved the bread. The soup? It was warm, and they needed warmth. The cubes? They lasted longer, but tasted like dust. Her chest felt heavy. She wasn't just a mother, she felt like a failure. Rue looked up at her with big, round, silver eyes. "Will we eat today, Mama?" she asked softly. Kayla smiled the way a mother smiles when she's lying. "Yes, my little star, we will." Finally, the line moved. Kayla stepped inside the market, the warmth hitting her like a wave. But it made her feel no better. She saw the human cashier behind the counter, tall, blonde, with tired eyes. His name tag read Eric. He looked young, but carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. People moved quickly through his line. No small talk, no eye contact. Kayla's turn came fast, too fast. She placed the items on the counter one by one. Eric scanned the first two without looking up. Beep, beep. Then, Kayla whispered, "Please, stop. I need to return the bread." Eric paused, looked at her, then down at the small roll of bread. His eyes shifted to the glass door where Rue stood outside, hugging herself. I don't have enough credits," Kayla added, her voice breaking. She reached out to grab the bread back, but Eric stopped her hand gently. He said nothing for a moment. Then he scanned the bread, too. Kayla's eyes widened. "No, I can't. Pay for it." Eric looked at her and said in a soft voice, "You already did." In a way, he tapped his own credit chip on the console, paying the full amount. The receipt printed out, silent and final. He placed the items back into her bag, then walked around the counter and handed it to her himself. Kayla stood frozen, unable to speak. Eric gave her a small nod. "Feed your daughter." Tears welled up in Kayla's eyes. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't say anything." Eric replied, "Just stay warm." People in the line stared, some with cold faces, others with quiet sympathy. One person took out a device and snapped a photo. Kayla didn't notice. She only looked at Eric. Holding the bag like it was gold, Rue ran in and hugged her legs. The bread had already warmed the small paper bag. Kayla walked out of the market with Rue, her steps slow and careful. She looked back once Eric was already helping the next customer. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just saved 2 lives with one small act. The doors closed behind her. The wind was still cold, but the bag in her hand felt warm for the first time in many days. She believed again that maybe, just maybe, kindness still had power in this broken world. Kayla walked slowly through the snow-covered street. The grocery bag pressed tightly to her chest. Inside, the warm bread gave off a faint smell, sweet and soft. She had never seen Rue smile so wide as when the child touched the bag. It was just food, but for them, it felt like hope. and hope was rare on this frozen planet. She looked over her shoulder once. The market's doors had closed. Hiding the human cashier who had changed her day, his name, Eric, echoed in her thoughts. A stranger, a human, and yet he had treated her with more kindness than anyone had in years. Back at their small Sheltora-broken metal crate stacked under a collapsed hanger, Kayla opened the bag. Rue sat on a blanket, feet wrapped in Kayla's scarf, shivering less now. Kayla tore the bread in half and handed it to her. "Mama, it's warm," Rue whispered. Like Papa's hands used to be, Kayla blinked away the tears before they could fall. "Yes, just like that," she replied softly. They ate together. And for the first time in days, Kayla let herself rest. The next morning, Kayla woke to a strange sound. Ping, 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 ping. It was her old communicator, barely working, lighting up with messages. She hadn't used it in weeks, not since she lost her cleaning job. The messages were from neighbors, other refugees, even strangers. "You're in the picture. You and your daughter look at the newsfeed." Kayla tapped the cracked screen. A photo loaded, slowly, blurry, but clear enough. It showed her standing at the market counter, reaching for her bag. Eric was handing it to her. Calm and kind. Rue's small shape could be seen through the glass door outside. The caption said, "Human cashier pays for alien mother's food, heartwarming moment in harsh times." The post had thousands of views, hundreds of comments, some full of love. "This is why humans give me hope. Bless this man," someone. "Find him and thank him." But some were filled with anger. Why help an alien? Our people are starving too. Another human betraying his own for pity points. Kayla's hands began to shake again. This time, not from cold, but fear. She had lived long enough on this planet to know how quickly kindness could turn dangerous. When people became jealous or angry, didn't matter who started it, someone always paid the price. She tucked the communicator away and rushed to the market. Rue held her hand tightly as they hurried through back alleys and side roads. When they arrived, the store was busy. Louder than usual, people stood outside talking. Holding up their devices, pointing at the windows, Kayla pushed through the crowd and slipped inside. Eric was at the counter, scanning items like always. But his eyes looked tired, more tired than before. His manager stood beside him. Arms crossed, voice sharp. "I told you not to get involved, Eric," the man snapped. "This isn't charity, it's business." Eric didn't answer, just kept scanning groceries. Kayla stepped forward, unsure what to say. The manager saw her and frowned. "You get out." "You've caused enough trouble," he barked. Kayla's breath caught in her throat. But Eric looked up at her, and his voice was calm. "She didn't do anything wrong," he said. "I made a choice. I paid for it myself. It's done." The manager hissed, "You're making us look weak, Eric. We can't be seen choosing aliens over our own." Eric turned fully now, facing the man. "We can't be seen being human, showing compassion." The market had fallen silent. Even the customers had stopped moving. Kayla whispered, "Eric, I didn't mean for this." He smiled, "Just a little." "Neither did I." Outside the store, someone captured the moment on video. By nightfall, a second post had gone viral. Cashier defends alien mother after paying for her groceries gets. Threatened by boss, the internet lit up again, louder this time. Supporters offered to send money. Activists called him a hero. Haters sent warnings. And Kayla received a message that made her heart stop. He helped you. Now they're watching him leave before it's too late. She read it twice. There was no name, just a blinking cursor. Was it a warning? A threat? A clue? Either way, one thing was clear. Eric's kindness had started something much bigger than food. And now, someone didn't want that story to grow any further. She looked at Rue, fast asleep, cheeks full, body warm. Then she looked at the bag. From the market, now empty, but somehow still full of meaning. She would not let this end with silence. She had to warn Eric. She had to repay the kindness before the world took it away. Eric sat alone on the rooftop of his building. The sun was low, casting a dull orange glow across the colony skyline. Broken antennas and flickering lights filled the view. In his hand was an old data pad, buzzing non-stop. Messages kept flooding. In from strangers, reporters, activists, even his own mother. Some were warm, kind, full of thanks. But many were cruel, calling him weak, calling him a traitor, telling him he had chosen the wrong side. He closed the pad and leaned back against the wall. All he had done was pay for someone's food. A little girl and her mother. It wasn't a big deal to him, at least. It hadn't been at the time. But now the whole colony was talking about it. Now it was a war, and he had become the symbol in the center. The image had gone everywhere, from local colony feeds to Earth-based media networks. One pictured Kayla holding her bag, Rue at her side. Eric standing tall was plastered across every screen. Some called it a moment of unity. Others called it a dangerous message. Eric didn't understand why kindness was seen as dangerous, but he was starting to see how much fear still lived in people's hearts. In the same moment, deep inside her metal shelter, Kayla stared at her own cracked screen. The same photo, the same headlines, the same comments, some full of love, others full of poison. She scrolled through them slowly. The girl is adorable. How can people hate her? They should stay with their kind. We don't owe them anything. That cashier deserves a medal. He should be fired. Kayla turned the screen off. Her heart beat hard in her chest. This wasn't safe anymore. She had lived in hiding for a long time for her daughter's safety, for her own. Now the world had seen them, and once seen, they could not be unseen. That night, Kayla made a decision. She wrapped Rue in a warm blanket, tied up her coat, and headed back to the market, not to beg, not to shop, but to warn the only man who had helped her when no one else did. When she reached the store, it was quiet. A closed sign hung in the window, even though it was early evening. She walked around the back. There was a flicker of light coming from the employee door. She knocked softly at first, then louder. Eric opened the door, surprised, but not afraid. "Kayla," he said. Stepping aside, "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she whispered, "but neither should you." They sat in the storage room. Surrounded by dusty shelves and flickering bulbs, Eric handed Rue a protein bar, and she curled up in a corner to eat it quietly. Kayla spoke in a low voice. "There are people who don't like what you did," she said. "They think you're dangerous because you were kind." Eric shook his head slowly. "That's insane." "No," Kayla replied. "It's the world we live in." She looked at him closely, her voice heavy. "I used to work for a communications cell. During the colony rebellions, I know how fast they move, how quietly they erase people who stir up emotion." Eric's eyebrows lifted. "You think I'm being watched?" Kayla nodded once. "I know it," she said, "and I saw the drone earlier. It wasn't a delivery unit." Eric leaned forward, voice calm but tense. "So what now?" "I go into hiding, just for buying someone bread." Kayla looked down. "Not for the bread," she said, "for the message that came with it, outside." A shadow moved across the alley wall. A small device hovered in the air, silent round. Black, it watched through a crack in the wall. It had no eyes, but it recorded everything. The conversation, the heat signatures, the emotions. Then it floated upward and vanished into the dark sky. Kayla stood, ready to leave. "I wanted to tell you before it's too late," she said. "Come with us, we'll disappear before they decide you're too much trouble." Eric stayed silent. He looked over at Rue, who was giggling at a joke from an old cartoon playing on his work tablet. Her laugh was real, pure, and for the first time, Eric realized something strange. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't even feel brave. He just felt like a part of something that mattered. "Where would we go?" he asked, voice low. Kayla smiled softly. "There are places the Watchers forget," she said. "Places they never cared to look." Eric nodded, slowly at first, then with purpose. "If I stay, I disappear one way," he said. "If I leave, maybe I find something better." He stood and looked her in the eyes. "I'm coming with you." Kayla led Eric and Drew down a narrow side alley behind the market. Frost covered the broken bricks, and the metal doors buzzed softly with cold energy. The night had fallen deep and heavy, hiding their steps in shadow. Eric had never been to this part of the district before. It was quiet, too quiet. No market sounds, no hover carts, no lights. Only the wind whispering through old vents and forgotten cables. They walked in silence until Kayla stopped beside a thick metal wall. She ran her hand along it, fingers brushing dust and wires. Then she pressed on a dented panel. With a low hum, the wall shifted inward, revealing a tunnel lit by dull blue lights. Eric blinked, surprised. "You've had this the whole time." Kayla nodded. "Old rebel passage built during the Resistance War. No cameras, no signals. Sit safe." Rue giggled. Stepping ahead into the glowing tunnel, her little feet echoed against the steel. Eric followed, still unsure how. All of this had happened yesterday. He was scanning groceries. Today, he was running from invisible enemies with an alien woman and her daughter. He wasn't sure if it was madness or fate, but deep down, he knew he wouldn't turn back. After a few turns, they reached a small underground chamber. Rusty crates lined the walls, and a dusty mattress sat in the corner. Kayla lit a heating orb and placed it near Rue. The warmth filled the space slowly, but it helped. Eric sat down, his back against the wall, still holding his old work badge in one hand. Kayla noticed, "You thinking about going back?" He shook his head. "No, I'm thinking about what this badge used to mean." Kayla looked at it too, then said quietly, "It still means something, but now it means more." Suddenly, Kayla's wristband lit up with a red flash. She pulled it up fast, scanning the encrypted message. Her eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Eric asked, voice tense. Kayla didn't speak at first. Then she turned the device toward him. A line of text glowed bright on the screen. "Watcher drones confirmed you've been flagged. Level 2, threat evacuate or disable the subject immediately. Eric." Leaned forward, voice cold. "Is that about me?" Kayla nodded. "They've labeled you dangerous now. But why?" He asked. "What did I do?" "You gave people hope," Kayla answered. "And some people hate hope more than they fear war." Eric stood up and began pacing. "I never asked for this," he said. "I just didn't want that little girl to starve." Kayla reached for his arm, gently stopping him. "No one asks for history to notice them," she said. "But when it does, you choose who you become." There was a pause. Then Kayla pulled out a hidden panel from the floor and opened a metal case. Inside were old tools, signal jammers, hacking chips, data spikes. She handed one to Eric. "If we don't leave soon, they'll track your face and lock every port." On this planet, Eric stared at the device, surprised. "You want me to hack a port gate?" Kayla raised an eyebrow. "You said once you studied programming before working at the market." Eric smirked. "Yeah, but not for this kind of stuff." Kayla smiled. "Then now's the time to learn fast." Back above, in the heart of the colony, a man sat in a dark office. Screens floated in the air, around him videos. Images, heat maps. The image of Eric handing over the food bag flashed again and again. Beside it was a warning label. Human subject Eric Grayson. Possible rally point. "Monitor closely." The man tapped the screen. Voice flat. "Send a retrieval unit." "Make it look like he left on his own." erase the story before it. Spreads again, meanwhile, in the tunnel. Kayla and Eric were already preparing. She gave Rue a small cloak to wear over her head. Eric tucked his badge into a crack in the wall, leaving it behind. He looked at Kayla, then at Rue. Are we really doing this? Kayla nodded, her voice soft but strong. We're not running, she said. We're stepping into something bigger and we're not alone. As they walked toward the next exit, Kayla stopped and handed Eric a small black chip. What's this? He asked. A contact, she said. Old friend owes me a favor. He can get us off this rock if we reach him before they find us. Eric pocketed the chip, his fingers brushing against it like it was made of fire. This wasn't about groceries anymore. It was about freedom, truth, and survival. They stepped into the next tunnel. The cold air met their faces again, but this time, they weren't just running from something. They were running toward something, too. The tunnel opened into a large hollow space. Old walls of bent steel surrounded them, layered with pipes and flickering lights. Eric stepped in carefully, his boots crunching over rusted tools and broken crates. Rue sneezed and wrapped herself. Tighter in the cloak, Kayla looked around, her eyes scanning every shadow. This was once a supply depot, she said quietly. Abandoned during the last planetary lockdown. Eric looked up, seeing part of a collapsed ceiling above stars, twinkled faintly through the cracks. It was cold but not freezing, safe but not entirely still. It was better than being out in the open. He helped Kayla pull down a blanket from a storage hook. Together, they made a small corner for Rue to rest. The child curled up without a word, her head resting on her mother's leg. Kayla lit a heating crystal from her satchel. It pulsed with a soft red glow, filling the air with a little warmth. She offered Eric a protein bar. He took it, chewing slowly, staring into the dark. His voice came low. I never thought I'd be hiding from my own people. Kayla gave him a tired smile. You're not hiding from your people, she said. You're hiding from the ones who forgot what being people means. As they sat in silence, Eric noticed symbols painted on the walls, glowing in faded blue ink. Some were circles with lines running through them. Others looked like stars. Wrapped in chains, he pointed at them. What do these mean? Kayla looked at the symbols, and her face grew more serious. They're messages, she said, from the old rebels, the quiet ones. Each symbol is a map or a warning. They used this shelter when they needed to disappear. Eric stood and ran his fingers over one of the symbols. It felt rough, real, like it had been painted in a hurry. Were you part of that? He asked. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. Before Rue was born, I helped smuggle out data leaks and refugees. We wanted to build peace, but that scared the wrong people. Eric sat back down, letting that truth sink in. All this time, she wasn't just a mother in trouble. She was once a fighter. Now, she was protecting a child from the same kind of darkness she once tried to defeat. He looked at Rue, now fast asleep, her little face calm, cheeks warm from the heating crystal, and he realized he would protect that child, too, even if it meant never going back to his old life. Later that night, Kayla pulled out a small metal cube and pressed its top. A hologram flickered to life. A star map filled with dotted routes and blinking ports. This is our exit plan, she said, pointing at one of the ports. Landing zone K-47, old freight pad, barely monitored. Eric studied the path, noticing a thick red ring around. The central zones, what's that? Lockdown perimeter, Kayla answered. If you enter it, your ID gets flagged and traced. We have to stay in the shadows until we reach the edge. Eric looked uneasy. I don't have a ship. Kayla gave a small grin. I know someone who does. She handed him a card with a name. Relin Card Dockmaster, Gate 17. He owes me, she said. But he's cautious. You'll have to convince him you're worth the risk. Eric nodded slowly. "I'll go," he said. "But not alone." Kayla looked at him, surprised. "You'd risk showing your face." Eric smiled faintly. "My face is already everywhere," he replied. "Might as well use it for something good the next day." Eric and Kayla took turns watching the surface through a hidden shaft. From above, they could hear footsteps, vehicles, and mechanical drones buzzing by. The search was on. The authorities weren't shouting. They weren't knocking on doors. They were just listening, tracking, waiting. The most dangerous kind of hunt. Eric spent hours teaching Kayla how to bypass Newport scanners using his store training. She showed him how to read rebel symbols and unlock hidden hatches in walls. Together, they formed a strange but perfect team, one raised on systems and machines, the other raised on survival and silence. That evening, as they sat beside the heating crystal again, Kayla whispered, "You know, Rue asked me today if you were her new father." Eric blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't know what to say," she added. Eyes lowered, Eric looked toward the sleeping child. He thought of her cold feet, her quiet bravery, her small smile. "I'm not," he said gently, "but I'll stay. As long as she needs me." Kayla smiled at that. And in the dark of the forgotten shelter, two people who had been strangers divided by species, language, pain sat side by side, sharing warmth, silence, and something new growing quietly between them. Not romance yet, not family yet, but something just as powerful. Asterisk, the sun had not risen for 3 days. Valros 3 was trapped in a long orbital shadow. A perfect time to move, a perfect time to vanish. Inside the shelter, Kayla packed a small bag with only what they could carry. 1 heating crystal, 2 cans of food, 1 change of clothes for Rue. No room for memories, only survival. Eric sat near the map projector, studying the blinking dots. Their route was dangerous, twisting through old sewer grids and forgotten cargo lines. At the end of that path waited Dockmaster Reelan Carr. If he agreed, they had a chance. If not, they had nowhere else to go. Kayla crouched beside Rue, gently brushing the child's silver hair. "Are you ready, little star?" she whispered. Rue nodded, holding tightly to a small plush toy that had survived every storm. Eric watched them, his jaw tight. He wasn't trained for escape. He had lived his life with scanners and price tags, not shadows and sealed tunnels. But now, he felt something stir inside, something sharp and focused. Maybe courage, maybe desperation, maybe both. They waited until the hour of planetary silence 3:07 local time. That was when the scanners rebooted and the drones recharged. They moved like ghosts, slipping through tunnels, avoiding cameras. Kayla used old rebel codes to jam door locks. Eric used a stolen access stick from the market to open security hatches. It was teamwork born from urgency. Halfway through the journey, they stopped in an old recycling station. Eric scanned the area for signals. Suddenly, his device blinked red. Active patrol nearby, code Echo 9. He whispered fast, "They're close." Kayla grabbed Rue and pulled them into a pile of broken scrap bins. They held their breath. A small black drone hovered down the hallway. Scanning with a red beam, it paused, turned, and hovered toward the bins. Eric held his breath, his heart thudding in his chest. The drone stopped just inches from his face. Then beep, it changed direction and floated away. Kayla let out a breath. That was too close. An hour later, they reached the outer platform near Dock 17. The air smelled of oil and old rust. The loading bots were quiet, shut down for the shadow cycle. Kayla signaled 3 times. Short bursts of light against the metal wall. A door opened with a hiss, and there stood Reelan Carr, a bulky alien with cybernetic arms and yellow eyes. He looked at Kayla first, then at Eric. "You've brought trouble," he said flatly. Kayla replied, "I've brought a man who showed kindness when no one else would." Relin crossed his arms. You want me to risk my ship, my port, for a human with a price on his head? Eric stepped forward, his voice steady. I didn't ask for fame, he said. I just couldn't watch a child starve. I'm not a hero, but I'm not a coward either. Relin studied him, silent. Then he grunted. You've got 10 minutes, he said. Get inside. The ship was old gray metal, patched hull, loud engines. But it was real, and it could fly. They boarded fast, staying low in the cargo hold. Relin locked the door and gave Kayla a brief nod. I'll take you as far as the rim belt, he said. After that, you're on your own. Kayla nodded. With deep thanks, that's all we need. As the engines powered up, Eric sat beside Rue. She looked up at him and asked softly, Are we going to a place with sun? Eric smiled. Yes, he whispered, and maybe even green trees. Rue grinned, and for a moment, though the world didn't feel so broken, but their escape had not gone unnoticed. Back at the central watch hub, an officer stared at the flight log. Unauthorized launch from Dock 17, he said. Should we stop them? Asked his partner. The officer shook his head. Too late, he replied. We'll mark them fugitives. But if they spark a rebellion out, there we'll make sure the people never hear their names. Inside the cargo ship, Kayla sat beside Eric, both wrapped in a blanket. Their eyes stared ahead, but their thoughts raced behind. They had escaped for now, but they were not free yet, not truly, still, in that moment. With the engines humming and Rue asleep, they had something, powerful hope. The stars were wide and endless above them. Relin's ship glided through the black sky like a whisper. They had passed the last checkpoint. Now, they drifted beyond the reach of colony scanners and patrol drones. Eric leaned against the cold wall of the cargo bay. Rue slept soundly in a hammock. Swaying gently with the hum of the engine, Kayla stood near the window, staring out at the empty void. But to hurt wasn't empty. It was freedom. Eric walked over, standing beside her. It doesn't feel real yet, he said, his voice low. Kayla nodded slowly. That's because we haven't landed yet. Freedom isn't real until your feet touch soil no one can take from you. 2 days passed. They kept quiet, resting when they could. Relin didn't talk much, but he gave them food and let Rue color on the ship walls with chalk. Kayla found a small corner to cook soup. From ration powder, Eric spent hours fixing one of the broken lights. He needed to work, to move, to feel useful, to distract his mind from what they left behind. Then, on the third day, Relin walked into the bay and grunted. Come up front, he said. You need to see this. Eric and Kayla followed him to the cockpit. Outside the window was a planet, small, green, and wrapped in silver clouds. No city towers, no burning skies. Just land, forest, water, and quiet. This is Orin 5. Rulin said, low-tech, mostly farming colonies. They don't care where you came from, only that you help with the harvest. Kayla felt her breath catch in her chest. She reached for Eric's hand without thinking. He squeezed it softly. This is it, she said. A place no one's watching. They landed at the edge of a quiet village. The air smelled of soil and rain. People watched from a distance. Humans, aliens, hybrids, curious but not hostile. Kayla and Eric stepped off the ramp, Rue clutching Eric's leg. Relin leaned against the hatch, his arms crossed. This is where I leave you, he said. Eric turned and nodded. We owe you, Relin grunted again. You don't owe me. You owe the next person. Then he was gone. The ship rising back into the sky like a quiet ghost. Kayla stared up at the trail it left, then looked down at the soft green grass under her feet. Rue bent to touch it with her fingers, smiling. It's warm, she said. Kayla smiled too. It's alive. Over the next few weeks, life began again. The villagers offered them a place to stay in an empty storage hut near the river. Eric helped build fences and repaired water pumps. Kayla started teaching local children how to read. Multiple languages. Rue made friends, picked berries, and laughed every day. No cameras followed them. No headlines, just real voices, real hands, and real work. At night, Eric and Kayla would sit by the river, sometimes in silence, sometimes telling stories. One night, Kayla asked, "Do you ever miss the old world?" Eric stared at the stars. "I miss the parts that felt like home," he said. "But I've found something better now." Kayla smiled gently. "So have I." One afternoon, a delivery ship arrived from another farming colony. A boy ran into the village square holding a small package. "It's for you," he said, handing it to Eric. Eric opened the box and found an old news chip. He inserted it into a projector. A headline blinked across the air. "Former cashier disappears after paying for alien groceries." Rumors spread across sectors. Below the headline were messages, copied and shared by many, people saying his name, sharing the photo, telling the story over and over again, even though the authorities had tried to erase it. The story lived. It traveled like light in a dark. Eric laughed softly. Kayla looked at him, curious. He held out the chip. They tried to silence it. He said, but people kept remembering that night. The village children gathered around a fire. Rue sat on Eric's lap, her hands sticky with roasted fruit. One of the elders asked him, "Will you tell us your story?" Eric glanced at Kayla. She nodded, eyes glowing in the firelight. So he began. He told them about the market, the bread, the bag of groceries. He told them about the warning, the shelter, the escape. And as he spoke, the children listened with wide eyes. Not because he was famous, but because the story felt real, and it made them believe that even in the darkest places, someone could choose kindness, and that one choice could change everything. Eric looked at Rue, then at Kayla. He saw a life he hadn't expected, but one he wouldn't trade for anything. They had lost a world, but they had found a family, not by blood, but by choice. And in that choice, they had created something stronger than borders, stronger than fear. A new beginning, built not on power, but on kindness.